He said he was struggling, said he couldn't help with my prescriptions anymore. I nodded and told him I understood. That was at 3:17 p.m. By 7:42, he'd posted a photo with his new Tesla, all shiny and smug in front of their house. The caption read, "Dreams do come true." I stared at it for a long minute. Then I pressed forward and sent it straight to the family group chat. No comment, no explanation, just the photo. They say silence speaks volumes, but that night, the quiet was suffocating. No one replied. No apologies. No, Mom, this isn't what it looks like. Just the same blue check marks under the image. I sat in my recliner, the one Tom had always called her throne, and listened to the refrigerator hum. The pills weren't experimental or indulgent. They were necessary. After my blood pressure scare 2 weeks ago, Dr. Roundtree changed my meds. "These ones will keep you stable, Nancy," he'd said, scribbling the prescription. "But they're not covered under your plan." I'd laughed politely. Everything about aging is expensive, even staying alive. I called Tom the next day. Not to beg, but because I'd helped him through so many things I lost count. The first house, the second business, the third baby. I thought asking for a little help, temporary, just until I sorted things, wouldn't be asking too much. "I just can't right now, Mom," he'd said. Voice tight, like it was my fault he felt guilty. "We're barely getting by, honestly. Everything's gone up. Groceries, gas, the mortgage. We're trying our best." I told him it was okay. Of course it was okay. That's what I've said for 40 years. I said it when he crashed my car at 17. I said it when he forgot my birthday 3 years in a row. I said it when he and Melissa went to Hawaii and didn't tell me. I found out through a filtered photo of a coconut cocktail on Facebook. But that night, seeing him grin beside a brand new Tesla like a lottery winner while I split my pill pack in half with a kitchen knife, that was something else entirely. I stared at the group chat after I sent the photo. My other son, Eric, read it. So did Lauren, my only granddaughter who still lives in town. No one typed a thing, no dots dancing, just digital silence. I didn't sleep well. I never do, really, but this time, it was different. It wasn't the usual ache in my hips or the phantom noise of the TV I forgot to turn off. It was a tightness in my chest that came not from my condition, but from something deeper, like being erased. Not rejected, just erased. Forgotten, unless I was needed. In the morning, I brewed coffee and didn't add sugar. I sat in the breakfast nook and watched the birds on the feeder Tom had built years ago, back when he still used his hands for things other than typing into a phone. The feeder hung crooked now, just like everything else. Around 9, my neighbor Joan called. She asked how I was feeling, and I told her fine, a word I've worn thin from overuse. Then she said, "Saw your boy's big news, and that's some car." I didn't answer right away. I watched a sparrow chase off a bigger bird from the seed tray. "Yes," I said, eventually. "It is." I spent the rest of the morning in the spare bedroom, going through the drawer I'd been avoiding for years. The one with bank records, receipts, old check stubs. I found a copy of the deposit I'd made for Tom's business 6 years ago. $35,000. I found the receipt for the down payment on their second house. Another $50,000. There was a note from Melissa in one envelope, thanking me for helping with the girls' school tuition. I don't remember receiving that note. But there it was. Brief, typed, no signature. I'm not a bitter woman. I know how life goes. Kids grow up, make their own choices. But I also know I wasn't just generous. I was useful. And being useful is the closest thing to being loved that some people can manage. I closed the drawer and stood there a moment, hands resting on the cool wood. My joints ached, but something else buzzed just under the skin, a slow, burning clarity. Like I'd swallowed a hot truth and it was spreading, waking up all the parts of me that had gone quiet. No more nodding, no more pretending, and no more splitting pills to make someone else's life more comfortable. The group chat stayed silent for 2 full days. Not a single word. Lauren changed her profile picture, a new selfie with some cafe pastry, but didn't say anything. Eric, who usually sends chain prayers and blurry photos of sunsets, didn't forward a thing. Tom? He read the message within 10 minutes. I know because I sat there and watched the seen check marks pop up. That was all he did. I didn't expect groveling. I've never been the kind of mother who demanded apologies. But something in me hoped he'd at least try to explain. A simple, "Mom, I know how this looks," would have gone a long way. But nothing came. Just digital quiet and the sound of my refrigerator, as steady as ever. On the 3rd day, I made soup. Not for anyone else. Not because someone was visiting. Just for me. Chicken and rice. The kind I used to cook when Tom was a boy and came home from soccer, bruised and hungry. I always kept it warm for him. Back then, he'd call out from the hallway, "Is it ready yet, Mom?" And I'd laugh. I don't remember the last time he came through that hallway. Around noon, I took a walk to the mailbox. It was warm for October. The leaves on Sycamore Drive had started turning, crisp red and gold underfoot. I shuffled slowly, careful on the uneven sidewalk. My legs don't move like they used to. But that day, they felt steadier than usual. I stood a little taller. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was something older than that. Inside the mailbox was a flyer for a car dealership. Lease now, 0 down, no payments until January. I stared at it a moment. The irony was so rich it made me smile. That's how they do it now. Finance now, pay later. Push the problem down the road. Sounded familiar. When I got back inside, I boiled water for tea and sat in the sunroom. That room's always been my favorite. Quiet, filled with light, like a warm-held breath. I picked up my notebook, the one where I write things I don't want to say aloud. I opened it and wrote, with more calm than anger. He said he was struggling, and maybe he is, but he bought the car anyway. That tells me everything. I sat with that sentence for a while, read it back once, twice. Then I flipped a few pages back and found older entries. Scribbles about Lauren's birthday, Eric's last visit, Melissa's diet trends. All neutral, all soft. All filtered through hope. I tore out 3 pages, crumpled them into a tight ball, tossed them into the waste bin. I didn't need them anymore. That evening, Eric called. I almost didn't answer, but the old habit kicked in. "Hey, Ma," he said. "You okay?" I said nothing. "I saw what you sent. That picture." Still, I said nothing. He sighed. "Look, I don't know what's going on with you and Tom, but maybe don't start drama, okay? It just causes tension." My hand tightened around the phone. "Drama?" I said, evenly. "I mean, sending stuff like that to the group, that's not your usual style." I waited a breath, then 2. "I sent a picture, Eric. No commentary, no accusations." "Yeah, but, you meant something by it." "Yes," I said. "I did." He made a noise, somewhere between a chuckle and a groan. Okay. But maybe just talk to him privately, Like, sort it out." I closed my eyes. I did talk to him. He said he couldn't help with my medications. That was the conversation. The car was the answer. Silence. "Look," he tried again. Tom's doing well, finally. You know how hard he worked. Maybe the car was a reward. So was I said. Come on, Ma. I was the reward, Eric. I was the backup plan, the cushion. Every time something went wrong, I paid for the soft landing, and I did it willingly. But now I needed something, just something small. And suddenly, he's struggling. He didn't respond right away. It's not about the money, I added. It's about what it means when a son tells his mother she's too expensive to help, and then celebrates a car that costs more than her health. Eric said, I don't know what you want me to say. Nothing, I replied. That's the point. We hung up soon after. I didn't cry. Not out of pride, just because there weren't any tears left in that drawer. Instead, I made a list. Not a grocery list, not a birthday list. A list of every dollar I could remember giving over the past 10 years. Rough guesses. I added notes beside them. Wedding deposit. Business bailout. Emergency dental for Lauren. When I reached the bottom, I counted it all, and then laughed. It wasn't the amount. It was the silence that came after each gift, as if kindness was expected, as if I was the furniture, useful, silent, never considered. The sun dipped below the trees, painting long orange shadows across the room. I folded the paper, placed it on the table, and poured myself another cup of tea. For the first time in a long while, I drank it hot. I didn't sleep again that night. Not from anger. That part had cooled. What remained was something quieter, heavier. A kind of weight in the chest that doesn't throb or burn, just sits there. Like a stone you swallow by mistake and can't get rid of, no matter how many times you try to cough it up. At around 3 a.m., I got out of bed and went to the spare room, the one where I keep the file boxes. Tax returns. Warranty slips. A paper trail of my life, carefully labeled and untouched for years. I turned on the little lamp with the faded green shade, sat down at the folding desk, and started pulling folders. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for at first, but I kept going. Mortgage statements, gift transfers, bank drafts, most of them with Tom's name on them, or Melissa's, or both. I flipped through pages the way people flip through old photo albums. Only instead of smiling faces and sunlit vacations, it was dollar signs and account numbers. One folder was labeled Home Equity Refi 2014. Inside was the paperwork for the time I refinanced the house so Tom could buy out his partner and keep the business afloat. I remember him sitting across from me at the kitchen table going on about opportunity and legacy. I didn't understand half of it, but I nodded. I always nodded. He didn't keep the business 2 years. Next folder, T. Orman, Education Fund. Not for my own children, no. That was for Lauren, her high school tuition when Melissa insisted the public school wasn't good enough. I paid for it gladly. Lauren was bright, sensitive. She deserved the best. Still does. But now I wondered if Melissa had even said thank you. Another. Auto loan guarantee, Tom, 2017. That wasn't the Tesla. That was the SUV before it. The one he said he needed because the girls were getting bigger and we need something safe for family road trips. I'd never once been invited on one of those trips. I went on like that for over an hour, pulling, sorting, tallying. I wrote the numbers down on a legal pad. A rough total, just to see it in one place. It came out to $213,800. $213,800, given over 15 years, quietly, lovingly, without interest, without conditions, not as loans. I'd never dared use that word. Just as help. I sat back in the chair and stared at the total. My hands were trembling slightly. I wasn't angry, not exactly. I was stunned. stunned by my own willingness, by the way I'd told myself over and over, that's what mothers do. And maybe it is. But what happens when the mother gets tired? What happens when she needs help and all she gets is a phone call that lasts 2 minutes and ends with, "Sorry, Mom, I just can't right now." The legal pad was still open in front of me. I stared at that number. Then I turned the page and started a new list. A different kind. What had I received in return? 1, I wrote, Mother's Day card, 2016. Said, "You're the glue that holds us together." Printed, no note. 2, Tom's speech at Lauren's graduation. Mentioned Melissa. Mentioned his boss. Didn't mention me. 3, call from Melissa. Asked for recipe. For Thanksgiving. Because Tom says yours is the only one worth eating. First and only compliment in 12 years. By the time I got to 6, I stopped. It wasn't helping. That list was shorter. Too short. And sadder than the first. I put everything away. Folder back into the box. Pen on the pad. Light off. I stood in the dark hallway for a moment, my hand resting on the doorframe. I could hear the refrigerator again. That constant hum. That steady, loyal hum. More consistent than any person in my life. And then I did something I hadn't done in over a decade. I opened the old wooden cabinet in the living room, the one that held my late husband's things. Fred had been gone 17 years, but some of his files were still there. Among them, the deed to the house. Original in his handwriting, his name and mine. Not Tom's, not anyone else's. Just ours. The house was mine. Still is. Every wall, every faucet, every light switch. The garden that I still tend every spring. The tree out front that Fred planted the week after we moved in. The one Tom used to climb. The house is paid off. No liens. No cosigners. No power of attorney. That last part I double-checked with my lawyer when I had the sense to ask. Tom always speaks like it's his already. When you move out, we'll update the kitchen. After you downsize, we can turn your room into an office. He never says if. Always when. As if I'm a tenant in my own life, waiting for notice. I placed the deed on the table and just stood there looking at it. Fred's handwriting had faded, but it was still firm, deliberate. That was the thing about him. He never said a lot, but when he did, he meant every word. I miss that kind of honesty. I went to bed at 5 a.m. and finally slept. Not well, but long enough. When I woke up, the house was quiet, and so was I. There were no texts from Tom, no calls from Eric, just one message from Lauren. "Grandma," she wrote, "I saw the photo. Are you okay?" 3 words, simple, soft, and for the first time in days, I felt something shift. Not in the family, not in the story. In me. I remembered the month I skipped my prescriptions so Toby could finish his therapy. That was 5 years ago, when Melissa called crying about the insurance mix-up and how he'd lose his spot if they didn't pay by Friday. "It's just this one time, Nancy," she'd said. "He's finally making progress. Please." I remember sitting at the kitchen table with the pill bottle in one hand and my checkbook in the other. I didn't hesitate. I'd been dealing with that same medication for years, and I figured I could get by for a while without it. Just a week or 2, maybe 3, just until they sorted things out. They never paid me back, and I never asked. That's the part that gets me now. Not that they didn't repay it, but that I trained myself not to expect it. As if expecting reciprocity from my own family was somehow impolite, too demanding, too dramatic. I found the receipt the other day. It was folded neatly inside a yellow envelope marked Medical 2018. $1,642, paid in full from my account. Melissa's name was written in the For section in her tidy, slanted script. Back then, it made me feel included. Now, it just looks presumptuous. I didn't tell anyone when I stopped taking the medication. I didn't want to worry them. That's the joke, of course. Worrying them assumes they were paying attention in the first place. That month was hard. The headaches came first, then the chest fluttering. I remember one night I sat in the bath with the lights off, heart skipping like a scratched record, and whispered to Fred's old bathrobe hanging on the hook, "It's okay, I did the right thing." I'm not sure I believe that anymore. In the years since, there have been a dozen other one-time things: Toby's braces, Lauren's summer program, the dog surgery. God, I still don't know why I paid for the dog. That one felt so absurd, I laughed out loud after mailing the check. I'd just gotten off the phone with Melissa, who'd said, "You're really saving the day here, Nancy," like it was a movie and I was the comic relief. I remember muttering to myself, every day, every time. They never saw me say it. They only saw the envelope arrive. Problem solved. Again. In church last Sunday, the sermon was about limits. The pastor said, "Even love has boundaries, or it becomes bondage." I sat in the back pew with my cardigan folded neatly on my lap and felt those words sit down beside me. Like a friend. Like truth. After service, I stayed behind while the others went out for coffee and donuts. I sat in the quiet building and looked at the stained glass window, the one with the dove and the flame, and thought, I've been burning for years, and no one ever noticed the smoke. That evening, I made a small change. I turned off the autopay on my bank account. Just the one for Melissa's family expenses, a polite name for a monthly transfer I'd been making for 4 years. Originally, it was for daycare, then groceries, then something else. It had grown roots. I logged in, clicked the toggle, and paused. A message popped up. "Are you sure you want to stop this scheduled payment?" "Yes." I clicked yes. The screen blinked. The payment disappeared. It was quiet after that. Not just the room, inside me, too. The next morning, Melissa texted, "Hi, Nancy. Just checking if the payment went through. Bank says pending. Can you confirm?" "No." "Hi, how are you?" "No, sorry to bug you. Just a transaction confirmation request." I didn't reply. Not yet. I made my tea, folded the laundry, watered the azaleas, let the silence grow legs. By late afternoon, she called. I let it ring, and ring, and ring. She didn't leave a voicemail. I thought about it while stirring my soup. How many things I'd given up for their convenience. How many quiet of courses I'd offered just to keep the peace. My peace had become their currency, and they spent it freely. That evening, I called my insurance company, asked for a full review of my prescription coverage, spoke to a kind woman named Marcia, who walked me through options I didn't know existed. "You might qualify for a supplemental plan," she said. "One that helps with high-tier medications." I asked her to send me the paperwork. I hung up and felt proud, not for saving money, but for doing something for myself without asking permission, without apologizing. The phone lit up again. Melissa. I stared at the screen until it stopped buzzing. Then I typed a message, not angry, not cruel. "I've stopped the monthly transfer. You'll need to adjust accordingly." I hit send. She replied within a minute. "What happened? Are you okay? Is this about something we said?" I didn't reply. Not yet. I needed them to feel what I've felt for years. Uncertainty. Waiting. Not knowing whether the person you depend on will come through this time. It wasn't revenge. It was a lesson, a boundary, and for the first time I wasn't afraid of setting one. "We thought you were fine." That's what Lauren said when she finally came by. She stood in the doorway, holding a paper bag with almond scones and my favorite lemon yogurt, like offerings at an altar she wasn't sure still existed. It had been nearly 2 weeks since the Tesla photo, since the group chat went silent, since I stopped answering Melissa's messages. Lauren was the only one who showed up. Not out of obligation, I think, but out of confusion. She stepped inside, looked around like something might have changed. Everything was the same, of course. My house doesn't change much anymore. The mail still stacks up neatly on the hallway table. The kitchen clock still ticks a little too loudly. But maybe I changed. Maybe that's what she sensed. "I brought snacks," she said, lifting the bag. "Thought you might like something sweet." I nodded and motioned for her to sit. I poured tea, set the plate between us, and watched her try to smile like this was any other visit. After a few polite sentences, weather, school, her latest exam, she said it, softly, carefully. "Grandma, are you okay?" It would have been so easy to say yes. I'd said it 1,000 times, but this time I didn't. I looked at her and said, "No, I'm not." She blinked. Her cheeks flushed a little. I don't think she was expecting honesty. Most people aren't. "I needed help," I said. "And your father said he couldn't. Then bought a car that cost more than my house did." Lauren looked down at her hands. "I didn't know," she murmured. I believed her. That's the worst part of all this. The way I kept them all comfortable. Comfortable not knowing, not asking, not wondering. I kept quiet so long, it became a kind of curtain they didn't even realize was there. And now they were startled when I pulled it back. "I've always thought you were just fine," she said, repeating it like it might make more sense the second time. "You never complained." "No," I said. "I didn't." She sipped her tea, then looked up at me. "Why now?" I considered the question. "It wasn't just the car," I said. "It was the ease with which he said no, like I was some stranger asking for a loan, and the ease with which he celebrated himself, like I hadn't helped him get there." Lauren didn't argue. She didn't defend him. That mattered. "I think," I added, "I've let people think I don't need anything, that I'm invincible. That's my fault, too." We sat in silence for a while, the kind that isn't heavy, just thoughtful. Then she said, "I told Dad he should have handled it differently, that he should have been more honest with you." "What did he say?" She hesitated. "He said he's under pressure, that he's tired, that he thought you'd understand." I laughed, quietly. A tired, dry sound. I've been understanding for 40 years. I could see the weight of it settling into her. Not guilt, maybe, but perspective. That's all I wanted. Not pity. Not even an apology. Just to be seen clearly. Lauren left a while later, after helping me with the laundry and walking the trash bin down to the curb. Before she went, she hugged me tightly, tighter than usual. No words. After she was gone, I stood in the doorway for a long time, watching the quiet street. My little world. My little house. And I thought about what she said. "We thought you were fine." People always do. When you don't cry, when you don't demand, when you clean your own floors and refill your own pills and pay for your own problems, they assume you're fine. Invisible is often mistaken for strong. But strength isn't the absence of need. It's the courage to name it. Later that evening, I sat with my notebook again. This time, I didn't make lists. I wrote a sentence. They thought I was fine because I never showed them the cost of keeping things together. Underneath it, I added another. I think it's time they learned. Then I closed the book and made a cup of tea. 1 sugar. No milk. Just the way I like it when I'm being honest. The power of attorney was something I signed without reading. Tom brought the papers over one afternoon, said it was just for emergencies. You know, in case anything ever happens. He was careful with his tone. Soft. Reasonable. It'll just make things easier, he said. No decisions without your say, of course. I was 69 then, still driving, still shoveling my own driveway, still doing the crossword in ink. I didn't think I'd need protecting, but the way he framed it, protective, almost reverent, I signed. I wanted him to feel trusted, like the man of the family, now that Fred was gone. I didn't think much about it again, until last week when I found the papers tucked behind a stack of insurance statements. There it was. My signature. Shakier than I remembered, but clear. His name listed below as authorized to manage, transfer, and access all financial assets. I stared at that page for a long time, longer than it takes to boil an egg, maybe longer than I'd stared at his baby face the day he was born. It hadn't occurred to me that I'd given him full access to everything, not just in case I got sick, not just in emergencies. Always. At any moment. I don't think he ever abused it. I have no evidence he touched a cent I didn't know about. But now I wondered, did he feel entitled because of this paper? Did he talk to the bank like he already owned my future? I put the kettle on and pulled out my address book. Flipped through until I found the number for Anita Myers, my lawyer since Fred died. She was the one who helped with the estate back then, a calm, steady woman with clear eyes and no time for nonsense. She answered on the second ring. Anita, it's Nancy Blake. I need to review some old documents. There was a pause. Everything all right, Mrs. Blake? I told her yes, then no. Then yes again. And then I said, I think it's time I put a few things back in my own hands. We scheduled an appointment for the next day. That night, I pulled out my banking statements, looked for patterns, found them. Recurring payments I'd forgotten I even approved, a family internet account billed in my name, a landscaping service Melissa insisted on just until they got settled, and a monthly transfer labeled emergency fund. His, not mine. I circled each one in red. In the morning, I dressed carefully. Navy blue skirt, gray cardigan, the pearl earrings Fred gave me for our 25th. I wanted to walk into that office not like someone asking for permission, but like someone reclaiming what was hers. Anita's office was quiet. Soft yellow light, a faint smell of lemon polish. She looked older than I remembered. Or maybe we both did. We went through the documents one by one. I asked her to revoke the power of attorney. Not suspend, revoke, entirely. She didn't blink. You're sure? She asked once, flipping pages with practiced fingers. I'm sure. Then I added, and I'd like to update my will, but not today. I want to think first. Take your time, she said. You have more of it than you think. We signed. She stamped. I left the office with a folder in my purse and a quiet sense of gravity in my chest. Not fear. Just the weight of a decision no one else could make for me. At home, I made lunch, a sandwich, and a cup of soup. Nothing fancy. But for the first time in weeks, it tasted good. Not because the food was different. Because I was. Later that afternoon, the phone rang. Tom. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. Melissa. I let it go. Then Lauren. I picked up. Hi, sweetheart. Grandma, are you okay? Yes. I'm just not picking up for people who want to manage my life but can't manage a conversation. There was a pause, then a soft laugh. I get it. I didn't explain, didn't offer excuses. She didn't press. That's the thing about Lauren. She listens without trying to fix. She's the only one who doesn't treat my quiet like a challenge to overcome. After we hung up, I stepped outside to water the mums. The hose was stiff from the cool air, but it worked fine. My knees ached, but I bent down anyway. Took my time. Felt the dirt under my nails. When I looked up, the sun was already low, casting long shadows across the lawn. I stood there a moment, watching the wind move through the trees, and thought, this is what it feels like to live on your own terms. No noise, no begging, just space, and the choice to protect it. My name is still on the house title, I checked. I went down to the county records office myself, stood in line behind a woman arguing about a fence and a man trying to register a boat. When my number was called, I handed over my ID and asked for a copy of the deed. The clerk, a polite young man with a red beard and thick glasses, tapped at his keyboard for a while, then turned the screen to show me. Nancy Elaine Blake, he read aloud. Sole owner, no liens, no transfers. Last recorded activity was in 1998. I nodded. Could I get that printed? He printed it and slid it across the counter. Here you go, all yours. I walked out holding the paper like it was something holy, because Tom speaks about this house like it's already his. He doesn't say it outright, no one ever does, but he drops it in little ways. When we redo the porch, we'll finally put in that bench. When you move into assisted living, we'll turn your room into a guest suite. We. Not me. Not you. We. That word used to comfort me. Now it presses. I remember the first time he mentioned the idea, moving me somewhere smaller, more manageable. Said it would be easier for everyone. For who, exactly? He didn't say. But the way he looked at the kitchen, at the hallway, at the attic, it was like he was already measuring furniture. That was 2 years ago. Back then, I laughed it off. Now, I realize he's been waiting, patiently, like someone waiting for a table to clear. But the table isn't clearing, and I'm not going anywhere. I sat on the porch that afternoon, deed folded in my lap, and watched the neighborhood kids ride their bikes down the sidewalk. 2 boys racing, a girl with pink tassels on her handlebars following behind, determined not to be left out. I smiled. For a second, I let myself remember when Tom was that age. Knees always scraped, hair sticking up in the back, full of questions and complaints. He used to love this house, called it the castle, said he'd never leave. Funny how time teaches people to want more. Bigger, shinier, newer. That Tesla probably smells like nothing I've ever owned. But the truth is, I don't want a new car. I want peace in my own home. I want to finish my life in the house where I built it. That evening, I pulled out the box of family photos. Not the ones in frames. The real ones. The old prints. Bent at the corners. Out of focus. I found one of Tom sitting on the front steps with a popsicle in his hand, his socks bunched down around his ankles. He was 7, smiling wide. I stared at that face a long time. Wondered how it became this man who looks through me like I'm a to-do list. I don't think he's cruel. I think he's blind to what it means to hold someone's life in your hands. I've held his since the day he was born. And now, he acts like I'm just in the way. The next morning, I called Anita again. I want to make a note in the file, I said. About the house. She understood without asking. You want it locked down? Yes. We scheduled a time. I brought the deed and she added a line to the paperwork. Retains exclusive right of residence. Not to be sold, transferred, or altered without express written consent. Simple words, but powerful. Back home, I taped a copy of the deed inside my kitchen cabinet. Just a reminder, not for anyone else. For me. Because when they come, and they will, with more suggestions, more gentle nudges, more conversations framed as what's best, I need to remember this. I am not a guest here. I am not temporary. I am not someone waiting to be moved aside. This is my home, my floorboards, my chipped tile, my garden that grows better than theirs because I don't rip it out every season looking for perfection. This house has outlived 2 dogs, 3 fridges, 1 marriage, and most of my friends. It knows me. It fits me. And I will not be guilted out of it by anyone, not even my own son. Mom, don't be dramatic. That's what Tom said when he finally called. His voice was tight, clipped at the edges, the way it always gets when he thinks he's the reasonable one in the room. It was early evening. I'd just poured myself a cup of tea and was sitting by the front window watching the neighbor's dog chase leaves across their lawn. When the phone rang, I let it buzz 4 times before answering. "Hi, Mom," he said, like it was any other Tuesday. Like the last few weeks hadn't happened. I didn't say anything. "So, I noticed a few changes," he continued. "Melissa said you stopped the monthly transfer, and I tried to log into the bank account to check something, but it said I'm not authorized anymore." He paused, like he expected me to jump in and offer reassurance. I didn't. "Is something going on?" I sipped my tea. "Yes," I said simply. Another pause. "Okay," he said slowly. "Can we talk about it? I just think maybe things are getting out of proportion." I laughed softly. "Out of proportion to what?" He sighed. "To what's actually going on. I mean, you're obviously upset about the car, and I get it, but..." "You get it?" "I do," he said. "But Mom, I'm allowed to make purchases. It's not about not caring. We've had a hard couple of years, and I just wanted something for myself for once. And I asked for help with my medication," I said calmly. "Once." "That's not fair," he snapped. "You know we've always appreciated everything you've done for us, but that doesn't mean we're obligated." "No," I said, "it doesn't. And I'm not obligated either. Not anymore." "Mom, come on," he said, tone shifting again. Softer now, more coaxing. "Why are you doing this? Is this really about the money?" "It's about what the money has replaced," I said. "It's about how I can give, and the one time I ask, I get a no, and a luxury car announcement in the same breath." "You're twisting it," he said quickly. "It wasn't meant like that." "I know," I replied. "That's the problem." There was silence on the line. A long one. "You're blowing this out of proportion," he said again, quieter this time. "We love you. Melissa and I both do." "No, Tom," I said gently. "You love my support. You love my silence. You love that I make your life easier without asking for anything back. But you don't love me. Not the way I love you." "And that's not the same thing." I heard him exhale, sharp and defensive. "I don't think that's fair. Neither was everything else." He was quiet again. Then, "So what now? Are we just not going to speak?" "We're speaking now," I said. "You called. I answered. That's more than I usually get when I'm the one who needs something." He didn't know what to do with that. I could hear it in his breathing. "I'll check in next week," he said, a bit colder. "Maybe we can talk more calmly by then." "No need to check in," I replied. "I'm not going anywhere. If you want to talk, you can. But I'm not going to chase you to be a son to me." He hung up not long after that. No goodbye. I sat there a while, tea cooling in my hand, feeling more steady than I'd expected. He was trying to reframe it, to twist my silence into hostility, my decision into a tantrum. But it wasn't a tantrum, it was a boundary. And boundaries only feel like punishment to those who benefit from you having none. That night, I didn't sleep much. I didn't cry either. Just lay in bed with the window cracked open, letting the October air drift through. Cool and honest. I thought about the way he'd said dramatic, how that word gets used on women like me. Women who stop accommodating, stop nodding, stop swallowing the hurt to keep things polite, as if asserting your worth is a scene, as if having feelings is offensive. The next morning, Melissa texted. It was longer than usual. "I know things are tense right now. Tom didn't mean to hurt you. We're just under a lot of stress, and I think this blew up too fast. You've always been such a huge help to us, and we're grateful, even if we don't always say it right. Let's talk soon and try to reset." Reset. Like this was a computer glitch. Like the problem was emotional static. Not years of taking without giving. I didn't respond. I just deleted the message. And then I made pancakes. For myself. With real butter and maple syrup. No substitutions. No watching my portion to save leftovers for someone else. Just a breakfast that was mine. That's what these days are now. Small acts of recovery. Tiny rebellions that feel like peace. 174 small payments. And not one thank you. That's what the bank clerk said when she handed me the printed list. Not in those words, of course. She said, "There are quite a few, Mrs. Blake. Would you like them alphabetized or sorted by amount?" I told her amount. I wanted to see it from the biggest to the smallest. To feel the weight of it stacked downward like sediment. I sat at the little desk near the window while she printed, watching the trees outside sway in the wind. It was a quiet morning, but inside me, something sharp had settled. When the clerk returned, the list was 23 pages long, clean white paper, black ink. No emotion, just numbers and labels, tuition, insurance, online tutoring, summer camps, groceries, gym memberships, travel, spa services, and monthly, without fail, a payment to a credit card that wasn't mine. T&M household account. That one had gone unnoticed for years. Small enough not to alarm me, regular enough not to raise suspicion. But over time, it added up. Thousands. I took the list home and spread it out on the kitchen table. Laid it flat like a map of something I'd been lost inside for years without realizing. Fred used to keep neat ledgers, handwritten, every bill, every gas receipt. He'd sit at the same table with a yellow pencil and a ruler, underlining the totals. "Know what's leaving," he'd say, "or it will all leave eventually." I used to tease him for it. But now I understood. I went through the list with a red pen. I didn't plan to return it to the bank. This was just for me. I circled every payment that wasn't essential, not for survival, not for emergencies, just comfort, maintenance, vanity. After 3 pages, my wrist started to ache. By page 10, I wasn't angry anymore. I was tired. It wasn't just the money, it was what it represented. The quiet, invisible arrangement I'd agreed to. Me as the unspoken insurer of their lives. Me as the backup plan. The soft landing, the fallback. The ATM in the rocking chair. And the saddest part? I wasn't even sure when it started. Somewhere between the first request, a small loan to cover a car repair, and the latest expectation, the house, the money, my future, I had blurred into utility. I turned off the light and left the papers on the table. Didn't even stack them. Just left them there, like someone finally walking away from a puzzle that wasn't worth solving. The next day, I called the bank and scheduled a formal meeting. Sat across from the same woman, now a little more alert to what I was doing. "I'd like to cancel all automatic transfers," I said, "and remove any third-party access on my accounts." She blinked. "All of them?" "Yes." There was a pause. "We can do that," she said softly, "but you'll need to sign individually for each. It's going to take some time." "I have time." An hour later, it was done. I left the bank with sore fingers, a small folder of signed forms, and a strange calm I hadn't felt in years. Back home, I made myself a grilled cheese sandwich and watched the sun hit the windows just right, the way it does when autumn leans toward winter. Everything looked softer. Not better, just clearer. That afternoon, Tom called again. I let it go. Melissa texted, "Can we talk? This is getting out of hand." I didn't respond. Then, around 5, Lauren called. "Grandma, I think they're freaking out." I smiled, not cruelly, just knowing. "They'll survive," I said. Lauren was quiet, then said, "They're not used to hearing no from you." "Well," I said, "they'd better start practicing." We talked a bit more. I asked about school. She told me she'd aced her sociology midterm and was thinking of switching majors. I told her I was proud. When we hung up, I looked again at the stack of payment records. Still on the table. Still waiting to be put away. But I left them there. Like evidence. Not for them. For me. When did I stop being a person and start being a wallet? I asked myself that while folding laundry, holding a towel that had been washed too many times, thin at the edges. It used to be part of a wedding gift set. I remember unwrapping it with Fred at the old house, before this one, before the kids. Back when things were still being built. Families, homes, hope. Somewhere along the line, I became useful. Useful is a dangerous thing for a woman. It creeps up slowly, wrapping itself around your worth like ivy. It looks like love. It sounds like trust. But it's not either of those. It's dependence. It's convenience. At first, it felt good to be needed. To write a check and watch the relief flood across Tom's face. To help Melissa with the girls and hear her say, "I don't know what we'd do without you." They meant it. I think they did. But over time, the words stopped. The gratitude faded. The help turned into habit. The habit turned into expectation. And I vanished somewhere in between. I used to love holidays. Thanksgiving was my favorite. The cooking, the laughter, the chaos of everyone crowding into the kitchen. The girls helping with the pies. Tom carving the turkey like he was on a stage. I'd stand at the sink afterward, elbow deep in dishes, exhausted but full. Now they make plans without asking. Last year, I found out they'd gone to Melissa's sister's house, 2 states away, because it just made more sense logistically. They sent me a photo of the table, no message, just the image. I ate a sandwich that day. I think the shift happened gradually. First it was, "Can we borrow?" Then it became, "We'll need." And eventually it was, "Go ahead and take care of it, Mom." The house? Mine. But it might as well be theirs in the way they speak. "You should repaint the bathroom. It'll help with resale." Resale. As if I'm the tenant and they're the brokers. They don't ask how I am. They ask what I can do. For them, for the kids, for the schedule, for the budget. I was the one who made birthday cakes from scratch, who drove in snow to pick up forgotten school projects, who mailed packages with neatly folded sweaters and handwritten notes. Now, I'm the emergency contact for people who never check in unless something's broken. I wonder if Melissa knows my favorite color, or what song Fred and I danced to at our wedding. I wonder if Tom remembers the name of my childhood dog, or if Eric knows that I once dreamed of owning a bookstore. It's easy to ignore someone who doesn't ask for anything. I thought being low maintenance was a virtue. I wore it like a badge. She's so easygoing. She never complains. She's always there. But you know what happens when you're always there? They stop checking if you want to be. They just assume you will be, that you should be, that you have nowhere else to go. But I do. I have myself. I found an old journal the other day, tucked behind the sewing kit in the hall closet. Inside were pages I'd written when the kids were small, notes about their first words, recipes I wanted to try, ideas for a small reading room I never built. And in the middle, this line: "Remember, Nancy, you are not just what you give." I don't remember writing it, but there it was, in my handwriting, as steady and sure as it used to be. I closed the journal and pressed it to my chest. Sat with it a long while. Later I wrote it again on a new page, just to see how it looked now after all these years. It still holds. I made myself a promise that night. No more giving to be seen. No more agreeing to be kept close. No more confusing usefulness with love. They will have to learn to reach out without their hands open, and I will learn to sit quietly and wait, not for need, but for care. For once, I won't fill the silence. Let them feel it. The night I ate dinner alone in the house I paid for twice, I watched Tom's wife post a photo of their anniversary dinner. White tablecloth, candlelight, lobster tails. Melissa in a low-cut dress she never wore to family gatherings. The caption read, "12 years, 3 kids, 1 Tesla. We're just getting started." Just getting started. I sat at my kitchen table, same one I'd had since Fred and I bought this house, and stirred my soup, lentil from a can. I'd added extra carrots like I always do. The kind of small improvement no one notices, but that makes everything better if you pay attention. There was no music playing, no phone calls to interrupt me, just the rhythmic ticking of the clock above the stove and the sound of my own breathing. I stared at that photo for longer than I should have. Not because of the car or the lobster or even the dress, but because not one of those 12 years she mentioned included the word thank you. I paid their first rent when they moved in together, covered part of their wedding, bought the crib for their first baby. They thanked me for each, at first, cards, flowers. Melissa once baked me lemon bars. But after the 3rd year, it all stopped. The gifts became habits, the help became silent, and I became background. They built a life with bricks I handed over. Now they pose in front of it like they laid the foundation alone. I closed the app and finished my soup. Later, I washed the dishes, wiped the counters, checked the locks. My routine doesn't change just because theirs does. As I passed the hallway mirror, I caught a glimpse of myself. Not in any dramatic way, just enough to notice. The same woman, a little thinner, still upright, still here. The house was quiet, painfully so, but it was mine, all of it. The floor beneath my feet, the cabinets I once painted yellow, the window Fred had insisted would face the best light. No one else had a key. No one else could claim it. And yet, somehow, I'd let myself feel like a guest. That evening, I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for something. I don't know what. Guests that never came, maybe, or a celebration that never happened. I poured one glass, sat in the sunroom with my notebook, wrote nothing, just sipped. Listened to the wind knock against the side of the house. It wasn't a bad night, just honest. There's a difference between being alone and being left out. Alone can be peaceful. Left out leaves a bruise. They didn't mean to exclude me. I know that. That's what makes it worse. I'm not part of the story anymore. I'm the add-on, the extension, the optional paragraph. Tom once said, "You're always welcome." But welcome isn't the same as wanted, and certainly not the same as remembered. I used to think if I stayed generous, I'd stay necessary. But they've shown me. They don't need me. They just need the money, the house, the fallback. I will not keep offering myself just to be nearby. Not anymore. Before bed, I stood by the living room window and looked out at the empty driveway. The street lamp buzzed. A moth tapped against the glass. I thought of Fred, of how he used to hum while brushing his teeth, of how he folded his socks in perfect thirds, of how he once told me, "The loudest kind of love is the quiet kind that shows up." And I realized, I've shown up for years, for them, for this house, for a life that now moves without me. It's time I show up for myself. The first time I said no and meant it, no one believed me. Melissa sent a message about a field trip. Lauren's youngest was going to the aquarium, and the school needed fees by Friday. "Just a small thing," she wrote. "It's only $60. Can you help?" In the past, I would have replied within minutes. Not because $60 mattered, but because I'd convinced myself that gestures, these small, continual yeses, were the only glue keeping me included, like my usefulness was the entry ticket to their lives. This time, I didn't respond. I read the message twice, then left it. That was Wednesday. On Thursday, she followed up. "Hey, just checking you saw the message. The aquarium thing? No worries if not." I still didn't reply. That evening, Tom called. He opened with his usual careful tone. "Hey, Mom. Got a minute?" I said I did. "We're just trying to coordinate some things for the girls, and Melissa mentioned you might be helping with the aquarium trip. Did you see her message?" I said I did. He waited. Then, "So, were you planning to take care of that?" I said no. Silence. "Okay," he said slowly. "Is something going on?" "I just said no," I replied. That's all. He let out a quiet exhale, the kind you don't think people can hear over the phone. But I've been listening to his silences longer than he's been forming words. I heard it clearly. The disappointment, the confusion, the slight insult. "Mom, it's just $60. "I know," I said. "It's not about the amount." "Then what is it about?" "It's about the fact that you only ever call me when there's a transaction to be made. It's about the fact that I've said yes so long, you've mistaken it for obligation. That's not fair." "It's not meant to be," I said. "It's meant to be true." He didn't argue, not right away. I think he knew better by now. The line between my patience and my clarity had shifted. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even defensive. I was done explaining. Eventually, he said, "We just thought you'd want to help." "I do want to help," I said. "I always have. But I also want to be asked, not expected. I want to be spoken to like a person, not an institution. And I want you to notice me when I'm not handing you something." He said he'd talk to Melissa. I told him he didn't need to. I wasn't looking for mediation. I was drawing a line. We hung up soon after. No warmth, no resolution, but no more pretending either. The next day, I got a card in the mail from Lauren. No text, no email, a real envelope. Inside, a note in her slanted handwriting. Grandma, I saw what happened. I'm sorry they don't get it. I do. Thank you for every single time you said yes. I see it now. I really do. There was no money in the card, no photo, no request, just words, just love. I pressed the card to my chest, sat with it in my lap. Let it be enough. Because sometimes enough isn't a feast. Sometimes enough is being seen. That afternoon, I went through the hallway closet, pulled out a stack of old boxes labeled for later and just in case. Inside were things I'd kept for the kids, heirlooms, books, letters, pieces of Fred's handwriting. I'd saved it all like a museum of memory, thinking one day they'd want to walk through it. But now I saw it differently. Some of it I kept. A few items went into a drawer marked for Lauren. The rest I packed away with a new label. Mine. Not to be passed down, not to be inherited, just to be held for as long as I'm here. That evening, I made a pot of chili, enough for one. I lit a candle, not for romance or guests, but because the room deserved warmth. I set the table properly. Cloth napkin, real fork, glass of water instead of my usual mug. I ate slowly. Not to savor the food, but the fact that I'd chosen all of it. The boundary, the silence, the dignity of sitting alone without apologizing for it. When the dishes were done, I wrote in my notebook. Today, I said no. The world didn't end, but something else did. The belief that I have to be small to be loved. Then I turned out the lights and slept without waiting for anyone to need me. There's a kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels earned. That's what the house has become now. Not a place waiting for noise, but a space filled with my own breath, my own pace. The sound of the kettle whistling, the creak of the hallway floorboards, the occasional tap of wind against the windows. Nothing sharp, nothing demanding. I used to dread silence. I'd turn on the radio or call someone, even just to hear them talk about the weather. Now, I let it settle. Let it move through the rooms like a guest who respects the walls. In that quiet, I've started noticing things again. The way light slants across the dining table at 4 in the afternoon. The scent of soap after I wash my hands. The exact moment when tea cools just enough to sip. I don't miss the noise. Not the kind they brought, anyway. Tom hasn't called since our last conversation. Melissa sent one more message. Something careful and polite. A request to revisit our dynamic. I read it, then archived it. I'm not angry. Just not interested in redefining a relationship I was the only one maintaining. I think they believe I'm punishing them. I'm not. This isn't retribution. It's release. I've stopped waiting for apologies that aren't coming. Stopped hoping for recognition from people who look at me and see obligation instead of history. It's strange how much of my life I spent hoping to stay close, bending, softening, giving more than I had, just to stay in the picture. But now that I've stepped out of it, I realize the frame was never mine. It belonged to them. I was just the background. Not anymore. I've started walking again. Not far, just around the block, past the school, through the small park where the leaves pile up this time of year. I nod at the same woman every morning. Gray coat, brown boots, small dog who hates squirrels. We don't speak. We don't need to. There's comfort in being seen without being asked for anything. One afternoon, Lauren called. No reason. Just a soft, "Hi, Grandma," and then talk about school, a new book she'd found, a soup she'd tried and hated. She didn't ask for anything, didn't bring up Tom or Melissa, just sat on the other end of the line, alive and present. At the end of the call, she said, "I miss your voice." I didn't cry, but I did hold the phone a little longer before hanging up. The next day, I opened a drawer and found Fred's old flannel. Still smelled faintly of cedar. I put it on and sat on the porch, wrapped in its worn softness, watching leaves blow across the sidewalk like old thoughts. I wondered what Fred would have said about all this. Probably something simple. "You were always worth more than they treated you." That's what I imagined him saying. And I think, deep down, I always knew that. But knowing something and living like it are different. I've started living like it. I've started writing again, too. Not letters, not journals. Just small truths on scraps of paper. I keep them in a jar on the counter. My own archive. Today's was this: being needed is not the same as being loved, and being alone is not the same as being forgotten. The jar is filling slowly, and for once, I'm not rushing to share it. A letter came in the mail. Not from Tom, not from Melissa. From a lawyer. Their lawyer. I stood at the sink when I opened it, afternoon light slanting across the countertop, hands still damp from rinsing out my teacup. The envelope was stiff, the kind that means business. I knew the weight of it before I slid my thumb beneath the flap. Inside, polite language, cautious phrasing. A conversation regarding estate planning, it said. A desire to align expectations for the future. No signatures. Just a typed name, a firm logo, and the suggestion that a meeting might help prevent confusion later on. Later on. They meant after I die. They hadn't asked how I was. Hadn't come to my door. Hadn't called again. But they'd spoken to a lawyer about alignment. I read the letter twice, folded it back into the envelope. Then I placed it under a ceramic dish shaped like a pear, a gift from Lauren years ago before her handwriting grew sharp and decisive. The dish still holds my keys, my loose change, a button I've meant to sew back on for months. I didn't respond to the letter, not because I was afraid. I wasn't. I've had my affairs in order for years. Anita and I revised everything weeks ago. The house, the bank accounts, the medical directives. Everything spelled out. Everything mine. But still, the gall of it. To bypass me. To try to align the ending of my life like it was a contract to be negotiated. They don't know me anymore. Maybe they never did. That night, I lit a candle. Not for grief, but for clarity. Sat at the table, pulled out my notebook, and made a new list. Not debts, not gifts, just names. People I've helped. People I've loved. People who showed up. Lauren was at the top. Below her, Anita, for her quiet wisdom. Helen, my neighbor, who brings my bins in without asking. Pastor Lane, who leaves a message on my machine every Christmas, even if I don't call back. Even the woman at the pharmacy who knows my name and never asks why I'm buying less than I used to. None of them expect anything, and maybe that's why I trust them. I tore the page out, folded it in thirds, slipped it into a folder marked Final Notes. Then I made tea. I haven't answered the lawyer's letter, and I won't. Let them sit with the silence, the same way I've sat with theirs. If Tom wants to know what I intend to do with my things, he can come here. He can sit across from me at this table and ask, not with an agenda, not with entitlement, but with humility. And if he doesn't, well, then he never deserved to know. Melissa will stew. She'll spin her wheels in legal hypotheticals. Try to guess what I'm thinking. But this time, I've said enough. The next morning, I found a voicemail. "Hi, Mom. I hope you got the letter. I know it might have felt formal, but we're just trying to be responsible. You've always been so generous, and we want to make sure things go smoothly when the time comes. No pressure, just, yeah. Let us know if you want to talk." He sounded tired, or maybe annoyed. It's hard to tell with him now. His voice used to change when he spoke to me. Soften, lift. Now it's all management. I deleted the message, went out back, pulled weeds, tended to the garden that still blooms, even in this thinning light. Later, I picked a single daffodil, put it in a chipped glass on the windowsill, because even things cracked at the edges can hold beauty. Even women who've been overlooked can refuse to disappear. And even silence, when chosen, can be a final word. A week after the letter, I had lunch with Lauren. She chose the cafe. Small place near the library, all pale wood and mismatched teacups. The kind of place that feels stitched together by women who know what it means to make something warm from very little. She was already there when I arrived, sitting near the window, her phone on the table, unopened book beside her. She looked up and smiled. A real one. No tightness, no strategy. "Hi, Grandma." We ordered tea and soup. No rush. The waitress had gray in her braid and called us sweetheart, like it was a title, not a diminishment. I liked that. When the tea came, Lauren stirred in honey and said, "Dad's upset." I nodded. "I'm not surprised." He said, "You're making things harder than they need to be." I smiled. "Of course he did." She hesitated. "He doesn't know how to talk to you anymore." "He never really did," I said. "He just got used to me saying yes." She didn't defend him. That's why I agreed to lunch. "You scare him now," she said quietly. "Not because you're mean. Because you've changed the rules, and he doesn't know the new ones. He never asked about the old ones either." Lauren wrapped her hands around her teacup. Her nails were short and clean. She used to bite them when she was nervous. Now she just breathes deeper. "I don't want you to feel alone in this," she said. "I'm not," I told her. "I've been alone many times. This is different." "How?" "This time it's on purpose." She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. When the bill came, she tried to pay. I stopped her. Not because I felt obligated, but because I wanted to. It was the first time in a long time that generosity didn't feel expected. It felt free. We hugged before parting, not out of ritual, out of recognition. When I got home, the sun was already lowering. Autumn has a way of slipping away before you're ready. I took out the final folder, the one Anita helped me label Legacy. Inside, the revised will, medical directives, notes about the house, passwords, the jar of small truths. On top of the stack, I placed a new letter. Handwritten, sealed. It wasn't for Tom, or Melissa, or even Lauren. It was for whoever comes next. The nurse, maybe, or the neighbor, or a young woman from the church who ends up helping sort through my things. It read, "If you're reading this, thank you. I hope my home was warm, even after I left it. I hope you saw the garden. I hope you kept the books. If you find a chipped mug with a gold rim, that was Fred's. Use it well. And if you ever wonder who I was, know this. I was someone who gave until she realized giving wasn't the same as being loved. And then, I lived the rest of my days on my own terms. Quietly, clearly, fully. I folded the letter, slipped it into the folder, put it away. Later that night, I stood in the doorway of my kitchen and listened to the silence. It didn't feel like absence. It felt like presence of something I'd waited a long time to come home to myself. So here's what I'll say to anyone still reading, still listening. If you've spent your life being useful, being agreeable, being the one who always says yes, it's not too late to stop. You can set down the weight. You can ask for nothing and still be worthy of everything. You are not a problem to solve or a role to play. You are a person, a whole one. And if this story spoke to you, share it. Not for me. For every woman still sitting in a quiet house, wondering if anyone ever saw her at all. They deserve to be seen. So do you.